beach in Singapore and how that could help strengthen the country's position against China.
And we'll be having a chat with PNP Chief Major General Romel Francisco Marbil about his plans for the police force and what they are doing about the proliferation of illegal pogos.
Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Sean Yao.
The Philippine Coast Guard today officially accused China of blocking efforts to evacuate a sick member of the armed forces from Ayungin Shoal in the latest encounter between the two. We say officially because although we carried the story earlier this week, the PCG only spoke up today.
The incident took place on May 19 and involved the Navy personnel who was stationed aboard the BRP Sierra Madre. The blocking happened the same day as Chinese troops seizing and throwing overboard food supplies that were airdropped, which were meant for Filipino soldiers on BRP Sierra Madre.
PCG spokesman Territorial called the Chinese Coast Guard's actions barbaric and inhumane. Camille Samonte has the big story tonight.
In this video released by the Philippine Coast Guard, Chinese Coast Guard ships and boats are seen hounding a rubber boat of the Philippine Navy. Aboard the rubber boat is a sick Philippine soldier who is being medevaced to hospital. The soldier was stationed on the BRP Sierra Madre in Ayungin Shoal. The Navy was supposed to transfer the sick soldier to a PCG ship when the Chinese vessels began their blocking maneuvers and at one time even rammed the Philippine boats.
Just showed how inhumane and unprofessional the China Coast Guard is. We have been contacting those Chinese Coast Guard vessels who are in that vicinity that we are conducting a humanitarian mission because the intention is to evacuate a sick personnel, and yet they still did a lot of dangerous maneuvers and prevented us from getting the sick personnel on board the regional boat.
Territorial says this incident happened last May 19 and was only made public today. Despite China's actions, Territorial said the PCG and Philippine Navy outmaneuvered the foreign boats and vessels and completed the evacuation of the sick soldier to Bulilion port. But due to China's actions, the sick soldier had to endure more delays. According to AFP Chief of Staff General Romeo Browner, the Navy's first attempt to evacuate the soldier was also blocked by the Chinese.
Ang intention talaga ng lalagi is harangin ang resupply natin. The moment na maubusan ka ng supply sa BRP Sierra Madre, obviously, ikamamatay ng mga tropa natin to, no?
The Chinese Foreign Ministry has responded to the incident saying it will allow the Philippines to deliver supplies and evacuate personnel if Manila notifies Beijing ahead of mission. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning added that, quote, the Philippines may not use this as an excuse to transport materials of construction to its naval vessels in an attempt to permanently occupy Renaijiao. The Chinese refer to Ayungin as Renyarjiao. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
Also today at the same press conference, UP marine scientist Jonathan Anticamara said they found that the corals in Escoda Shoal or Sabina Shoal are almost 100% dead.
We found on the first day ay extensive na masyado yung bleaching to the extent that what we saw, what we documented across all the area na nilangoy namin, almost 100% na patay na yung mga corals. And iba-ibang stages nung pagkamatay.
Meron kaming nakita na mga testing na ginawa sa ilalim. Okay? Kung anong dahilan, hindi namin alam kung ano yung klarong dahilan. But definitely, meron silang gustong gawin sa lugar na yon, kaya ang dami nilang pag-aaral na ginagawa doon sa lugar na yon. At maganda isipin nyo from a strategic perspective na katulad ng pagpapaliwanag kanina, ang lapit lang yan sa Palawan.
They inspected the area just last June 4 and the UP scientists were accompanied by the PCG. Again, despite the presence of our Coast Guard, the Chinese boats kept forcing the scientists to leave the area, even ramming the PCG vessel. 2 hovercrafts and a Chinese helicopter also appeared overhead, though the scientists carried on and kept collecting samples underwater.
China Coast Guard, this is Philippine Coast Guard. We are conducting marine scientific research activity. Please keep clear with us for safety.
Recall that Escoda Shoal has been in the news lately due to the increased presence of Chinese vessels as tracked by satellite imagery. In May, the same group found piles of crushed corals dumped on the sandbars. Anticamara called their findings an ecological disaster.
We are so dependent on fish and fisheries for food, livelihood, income. So kung ganyan ka-extent ang sira ng coral reef, baka hindi lang siya sa West Philippine Sea, but across many shallow reefs ng Pilipinas, may expect natin na there will be a lot of decrease and decline in the fisheries in the Philippines as the coral reefs parang slowly die at a massive rate. No? That's really an ecological disaster.
The Treaty of Paris between Spain and the United States crystallized our islands into a cohesive whole. The Treaty of Washington clarified the extent of our sovereignty and patrimony and a line set by international powers.
That was, of course, President Marcos delivering the keynote address at the 21st Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore last week. Now, why was the mention of treaties such a big deal? Well, former Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio said that if it corrects the greatest misconception about Philippine territory. Let's take a look back at history. The Treaty of Paris handed over to the U.S. former Spanish territories, including the Philippines, and was signed in 1898. There was one problem with it. It did not include Scarborough Shoal and the Spratly Islands. So it was amended 2 years later in 1900, and that treaty was called the Treaty of Washington. This new treaty has only one article, that Spain also cedes to the U.S. any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago that were not included in the Paris Treaty.
Justice Carpio also mentioned Spanish-era maps like the Murillo Velarde map as historical basis for the treaty lines. The 1744 iteration of the map clearly shows Scarborough, labeled back then as Panakot, as well as the Spratly Islands. Another interesting point raised by Justice Carpio is that China may have inadvertently supported the Philippines' position when it invoked the Treaty of Washington in a position paper during the UNCLOS arbitration proceedings. You are seeing that 2014 position paper right now. Carpio said this qualifies as judicial admission. He added that China may have been misled by some legal luminaries from the Philippines who only focused on the Treaty of Paris, which, as mentioned, limited our scope of territories.
So joining us tonight to talk more about this, we have none other than former Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. Justice Carpio, good evening. Thanks for making time for us again.
Good evening. Good evening, Gretchen. Good evening, Sean. Good evening, Regina.
Justice, I'd like to take off from the interview that you gave our sister program StoryCon yesterday. You called President Marcos mentioning the treaties at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore a watershed moment. And you also said that there is a principle in international law that says countries are bound to respect treaties, not just historical claims, but treaties. Can you confirm that, and can you give us more context on that, please?
Yes, there's a principle in international law, uti possidetis juris, roughly translates as you possess under the law, stay there. It was developed because of the colonial powers established the boundaries of their colonies in Africa and in Latin America and elsewhere in the world. And if you look at the map of Africa and South America, you will see that the boundaries are drawn in straight lines. And a tribe may live on both sides of the boundary. So after two countries become independent, there will be border wars because the same tribe lives on both sides of the boundary. So to prevent border wars, to prevent boundary wars, international law developed the principle of uti possidetis juris, that these boundaries drawn by the colonial powers for their colonies as they emerge to become independent states, these boundaries are sacrosanct. They must be respected by all states, not only by the colonial powers, not only by the states involved in whose boundaries have been fixed, but all the rest of the world. That's the principle of UT Possidetis Juris. And that applies to the Philippines because Philippine territory is defined by three treaties. The Treaty of Paris of 1898 between Spain and the U.S., both colonial powers. And then the Treaty of Washington of 1900, also between the U.S. and Spain. And the third treaty, the Treaty of 1930 between UK and the US, demarcating the boundary between southern Philippines and British North Borneo.
Actually, that was a point raised by some pundits online, I know, because they've been tweeting and reacting to the speech of President Marcos, bringing up the third one, the Anglo-American Treaty of 1930, which says that there is a 118-degree east longitude, which is the western limit of the Philippines. Is the Scarborough Shoal and are the Spratlys, part of the Philippine territory according to that, or was it excluded? What is the Anglo-American Treaty all about?
The 118-degree longitude, that's in the Treaty of Paris. The treaty with the British, that demarcates the boundary between southern Philippines and British North Borneo. It is the Treaty of Washington of 1900 that clarified that what Spain ceded to the U.S. included other islands of the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines of the Treaty of Paris. And these are the islands in Mapun Island, Cagayan de Sulu, Cebuto, and of course, Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys. In fact, in 1938, the Commonwealth government of the Philippines, manned by Filipinos, asked the U.S. Secretary of State, Colonel Hull, if Scarborough Shoal is part of Philippine territory because it's outside the treaty lines, because the Commonwealth government of the Philippines at that time they were worried, the leaders at the time of the Philippines were worried that other countries might claim Scarborough Shoal. So they planned to put up a lighthouse on Scarborough Shoal, but they have to clarify first whether Scarborough Shoal is part of Philippine territory. So they asked the Secretary of State of the U.S., and the Secretary, Colonel Hull, in a memorandum, replied formally in a written memorandum saying that yes, Scarborough Shoal forms part of Philippine territory under the 1900 Treaty of Washington. He said it's considered to be part of the islands ceded to the U.S. Under the Treaty of Washington of 1900. At that time, he said there were no other claimants to Scarborough Shoal.
Right. Justice Carpio, as I was listening many times over to your interview on our sister show StoryCon, I couldn't help but wonder, though, with international law, with UNCLOS, with what you said about these treaties being actually part or being considered under international law as well. And when I look at these lines on the map, the newer line, of course, with the whole EEZ under UNCLOS, then that boxy straight line that was under the Treaty of Paris with the addition of the 1900 box that contains Scarborough and Spratlys, and then now that we have our pending Maritime Zones Act, how do we compute which one or which line or where the line ends? And will these all really tie together in the end, giving consideration to the treaties, the three treaties that you mentioned? Will it give credence also to UNCLOS?
Well, the Maritime Zones Act that has been approved by both houses of Congress and still awaiting the signature of the President, will not in any way change our territorial claim because the basic law now setting our claim, our territory is now Republic Act 9522. You can see there the archipelagic baselines that will not be changed under the proposed under the incoming Maritime Zones Bill. Our archipelagic lines will not be changed. And also, Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys are islands within the KIG lines in the Spratlys are still there. That's defined under Republic Act 9522 as a regime of islands. It's not part of the Philippine archipelago, but under UNCLOS, you can be an archipelago and you can still have offshore islands under the regime of islands, and that's exactly what Scarborough Shoal and and our KIG islands have been considered under the Republic Act 9522. So there is no conflict.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that one up.
What can we do with the that 2014 position paper that China put out that you said inadvertently supports the Philippines' position because it cites the Treaty of Washington? And again, to reiterate to the viewers, the Treaty of Washington includes the Spratly Island chain as part of Philippine territory, not just exclusive economic zone. So what can we do with that 2014 position paper?
Well, that's a judicial admission by China that Philippine territory is also regulated by the Treaty of Washington, which means that the Philippine territory is not limited to the islands within the treaty lines. It includes other islands of the Philippine archipelago lying outside the treaty lines. So the question is, what are these islands of the Philippine archipelago lying outside the treaty lines? Where is that document or map? That map is the 1875 Carta General del Archipelago Filipino, which was the last Spanish map of Philippine territory. It's an official map of Philippine territory during the Spanish regime. That was the last map that Spain drew for the Philippines. And when the Americans came here, the Americans totally adopted that map as the map of the Philippine territory because the Americans didn't have a map of Philippines at the time. And they just followed the Carta General. So in the arbitration of Islas Palmas, that's the arbitration between the U.S. and the Netherlands over Islas Palmas, an island off the coast of Mindanao in the Philippine Sea. The U.S. memorandum states, this was the submission of the United States to the arbiter, Max Huber. He said, the U.S. said that this 1875 map is an official map of Philippine territory during the Spanish regime and during the American regime. And that 1875 map shows Scarborough Shoal as part of the Philippines and the Spratlys as part of the Philippines. And in that map, you can see the Scarborough Shoal as depth soundings. These depth soundings, there's a measurement of the depth of the waters where the rocks are to guide the navigators to avoid the rocks. And in this Spratlys area, the islands there are named already. Tito is there. Tito is the name for Pag-asa. There's also Ituaba. There's also Loita. We call that Kota now. That's a Filipino name. So all the islands there that we claim under KAG are in that map and with depth sounding. So there is no map from Vietnam, Malaysia, or China showing that they claimed the Spratlys as of 1875. No. China claimed the Spratlys only officially in an official document dated only 1947. It's a very the claim is very late.
Justice Carpio,
Vietnam also claimed that by virtue of the former claim of France, but France claimed it only only in 1933. So our claim is much earlier, prior.
You're a maps expert, and I was actually at the National Library earlier this week looking at the 1744 version of the Murillo Velarde map, and it made me wonder how strong are maps really in terms of using it as defense for claims on territory, because also in that same map, I saw Borneo for one, and is it correct that it isn't, as you mentioned, it isn't the Murillo Velarde map that is attached to the Treaty of Paris, but the Carta General, which you mentioned, how specific is that map? And is it automatic that everything is on that map is already claimed as territory by the Philippines, or does it have to be recognized in some way by different countries?
Well, the 7034 Murillo Velarde map has a portion of Borneo, but that was not claimed by Spain. Spain never had any settlement there in Borneo. But of course, you have to show that part of Borneo because it's very close to the Philippines. But that was never claimed by Spain. If you see a map of a country, it may also show other islands belonging to other states, but it doesn't mean that. It doesn't, of course, mean that in the map of the Philippines, if you show there are other islands that do not belong to the Philippines, that doesn't mean that we're claiming those islands, because you have to look at the map and also other explanations, the actual possession or exercise of sovereignty. So in the 1734 map, no other country claimed the Spratlys or Scarborough Shoal. It's only Spain. In the 1808 map of Spain, of the Philippines, no other country claimed the Spratlys or Scarborough Shoal. In the 1875 map, no other country claimed the Scarborough Shoal or the Spratlys. And in fact, the British never claimed the Spratlys. It's only Malaysia that claimed later on, but the British never claimed it. The British also conducted hydrographic survey in the Spratlys, but not to claim it, just to guide their navigators, because they call it dangerous grounds. Because if you don't know where those rocks are, your ship could run aground.
Right.
So it's only Spain that really claimed among the colonial powers, only Spain claimed Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys.
Okay, speaking of claims, Justice Carpio, we throw the word claim so much. There are such things called historical claims. Now we have these treaties, which are also kind of claim. Which claim takes precedence over which claim, over other claims? And how do we pit these claims against each other for the benefit of everyone who might not be, automatically knowing how these things work? Yeah. How do we piece through it?
The international gives priority to the first claimant. That's what they call discovery. Whoever discovers has priority, but discovery alone is not sufficient. You must also exercise continuous and the peaceful display of sovereignty. That's exactly the case of Islas Palmas. Spain was the first to discover Islas Palmas off the coast of Mindanao and included in the map of 1875. But the Dutch in Indonesia, the Dutch East Indies Company, sent its ship, its people to Islas Palmas, and the people in Islas Palmas, about 700 of them, the chieftain, and they entered into a treaty with the Dutch, and the people there, the chieftain, recognized the sovereignty of the Netherlands, and they flew the Dutch flag. And so there was a dispute between the U.S., which became the colonial power after Spain. There was a dispute, and that dispute was submitted to arbitration. And the rule, according to that case, the ruling was discovery alone is not sufficient. It must be followed by continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty. But the Max Weber, the arbiter, said this applies only if the territory is inhabited. If it is inhabited, you have to go there and get the consent of the people that you are the overlord, that you are the sovereign. But if the island is uninhabited, Max Weber said that will be a different rule, but it stopped there. So the next case was the Clipperton Island case, where France claimed Clipperton Island, a completely uninhabited island. After claiming it, France never returned to that place. And 39 years later, Mexico claimed the island, and so there was a dispute. And the arbiter at that time, King Emmanuel of Italy, said, because it was uninhabited, the claim of France by discovery was complete. When France claimed it, there was no other claimant. It was uninhabited, so the title was complete. France did not have to show continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty because there were no people there. France could not send a general or a commodore there to get a treaty signed because the turtles and the crabs in that island will not sign a treaty. There were no humans there. So the rule of Islas Palmas under Max Huber applied only if there are inhabitants.
Right.
Now, in the case of the Spratlys, there are no inhabitants. The tribunal said, the tribunal at The Hague in the July 12, 2016 award said, there is no historical record of human habitation in any of the islands in the Spratlys. So because the Spratlys were uninhabited, and in fact the tribunal said uninhabitable because there's no water there, then the Clipperton Island case will apply. That once upon discovery, the title of Spain became complete. In fact, the title of Spain became complete in 1734 under the Clipperton Island ruling. And that's why we have priority there.
Right. Right.
So it's not mere discovery alone if there are inhabitants, but if there are no inhabitants, then discovery alone will be sufficient to complete your title.
But in this case, discovery alone doesn't suffice. But it is quite a complex issue. You'd have to go deep in history to. Thank you for piecing it together for us, by the way. But we're going to have to leave that there for tonight. Thanks so much for your time, former Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio.
Up next, we will be speaking with Police General Romel Francisco Marbil about his plans for the PNP. Stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News.
A court has withdrawn the search warrant that it issued against a recently raided Pogo hub in Pampanga, citing technicalities. Ria Fernandez with that story.
Just like any other law enforcement office, just like any other coordinating body, kami po ay nalungkot, na-frustrate, na-disappoint. But then again, as we are all co-equal branches of government, the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary, we being part of the executive department, executive branch, we defer to the wisdom of the Honorable Court and we respect her decision on whatever basis her decision is founded on.
The Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commissioner PAO could not hide its disappointment after the Bulacan court revoked the search warrant. The warrant was intended for a follow-up raid on the previously raided Pogo hub in Porac, Pampanga, and to rescue the remaining employees who were allegedly being abused inside.
Unfortunately, yes, ito po ang kauna-unahang pagkakataon na nagkaroon ng reversal sa ating application po ng warrant.
Apparently, the warrant did not detail the items and individuals to be searched. PAOK says it has addressed these technicalities. But because of this, Senator Win Gatchalian now suspects that Pogo syndicates have infiltrated the courts. He suggested a possibility that someone tipped off the operator of the raided Pogo in Porac, Pampanga about a search warrant filed by the operatives.
Kung mapapansin natin itong mga last few warrant of arrest na nangyari, puro sa Bulacan courts eh. No? So siguro alam nila na dito na naman pupunta, nagkaroon na sila ng mga mata at tenga doon sa korte at nalaman na nila.
Supreme Court spokesperson Attorney Camille Ting says the Office of the Court Administrator has been instructed to look into the denial of the search warrant. The Supreme Court will also look into Senator Gatchalian's allegations. According to PAOK, it is indeed possible that the syndicates have connections with various branches and agencies of the government. In fact, PAOK has its own matrix of these Pogo linkages, which it describes as very deep.
I apologize, pero that is only for the use of our agency to guide us in our operations against these illegal pogos. It's very deep. It's concerning. It's very disconcerting. It is very alarming.
For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
To talk about these issues and more, let me bring in our second guest for tonight. We have on the show Police General Romel Marbil. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening po.
Good evening, General.
Well, related to that story that we just played, I've been wanting to ask, unang-una po, what are the protocols? I mean, when it comes to these reports on Pogos, ano po ba, who is tasked to investigate, for one, for illegal Pogos? Pag na-revoke na po yung license, such as in the case in Tarlac. And this one also, what is the procedure that we have to follow?
No, number one, no. We're talking about illegal pogos, no. Hindi kasi kami in charge yun, the one in charge is PAGCOR.
It's really PAGCOR?
Yeah, not
Okay.
us. So it's a gaming. So kami naman, kung may mga reports, let's say kagaya niyan, more of kami sa illegal human trafficking. So pag kami mga reports, kagaya may mga Chinese na pupunta sa amin, na nasasaktan siya, doon lang kami pupunta. But for us to really look doon sa mga gaming, it's not us. Hindi po kami ang regulatory
So
body.
PAGCOR has an enforcing police body?
Or would they
Policing
call the
body?
PNP then for help?
Oo.
No, yeah, of course. Kasi sila yung regulatory eh. Kung nakikita nila kagaya niyan, they need the help, di ba? But they're the one need to stop it. Kasi hindi naman po kami nag-ano yan eh. Hindi
Bale,
po
General, sa madaling salita, kung tinawagan kayo ng PAGCOR for help, tutulong kayo. Pero on your own, kumbaga parang motu proprio, hindi kayo...
No, we are not allowed to go and check doon. Wala po kaming capability for that.
It isn't the local government as well. So in the case of Mayor Alice Go, na-revoke na yung license ng Pogo, hindi siya, yung responsibility doesn't fall on her.
No, no, I cannot... Di po I can speak for Mayor no? But kami, we're just looking dun sa law enforcement side. At sa amin lang, kung tinitignan namin kung may pagkakamali, kung let's say human trafficking, may nasasaktan, hanggang dun, kasi hindi naman kami regulatory eh. Yun ang napupunta sa amin eh. Bakit hindi kami very concerned dun sa mga illegal pogos? Number one, it's not us. It's
Pero for
PAGCOR
example,
the one.
General, kunwari may nagsumbong sa inyo na, or tumawag sa inyo kunwari sa pulis na, tulong po dahil ito po, nasasaktan po ako sa loob ng Pogo, does that then give you license to, kumbaga, rescue the person
Yeah,
or
of course,
to call,
yeah.
to answer the call for help?
Yes, yes. That's, meron po kaming, pero mga fasi, na pwede kayong pumunta dyan. Kasi talagang call yan, and for us to look. Pwede po kami pumasok at any establishment. Kailangan
But there
po.
has to be a court search warrant issued by the court.
No.
No,
No
not
need.
even.
Kasi kung talagang kailangan mo at sinabi mo nasasaktan ka doon sa mga tao na may mga nandito na that's enough for us to really...
In this case, what happened to Pampanga? There are allegations of kidnapping and also torture.
Oh yeah, of course. But yan, report kasi sa amin yan eh. It's not first-hand na report na napunta sa police. But since it was reported dun sa, I think, PAOK, then they have to make a report and ask the police for assistance. Dun po kami tumulong. But since, bakit namin we need to apply po yung search warrant? Kasi we need to inspect kung asan talaga nangyayari. Kasi ebidensya po yun nandun eh. But right now, ang ginawa po ng CIDG natin, di ba lately, hindi po na-approve yung search warrant initially, no? And ang sa amin lang naman, di pumunta po yung mga tao and then they may complain, meron na po kaming case against dun sa illegal Pogo for human trafficking. But I guess, hindi po illegal Pogo ang kinakaso namin. It's illegal human trafficking ang ano po natin.
It's not the operations per
It's not
se.
the Pogo
Kasi sa
operation.
PAGCOR yun. That's
Yeah.
under PAGCOR.
Yeah.
What about General outside of Pampanga? Kamusta naman yung operations natin with the cracking down on the criminal activities of the illegal Pogos? Again, clarifying that you don't have remit over the operations per se, pero in criminal activities within the other Pogo hubs.
Number one, no, yung sa amin lang naman is yung kung mayroong mga scam and we have the reports. Doon po kami pumapasok. Kasi doon po nagpo-fall doon sa anti-cybercrime namin. And second, sabi ko nga, pagka it's more, kung meron pong mga nagko-complain, mga tao na sasaktan, doon lang po pumapasok yung police. But kung kami, inspect po namin yung yung industry ng offshore gaming, hindi po namin trabaho yan.
Right, I get that, General. Pero kamusta naman yung operations? Kamusta naman yung crackdown operations in other Pogo areas?
We have report, no? We are receiving reports may mga illegal human trafficking. So doon lang kami
Sa maraming areas like Parañaque, in Pasig as well.
Opo.
Cavite, for instance.
Opo. Pagka ganyan, what we are doing, especially ang may hawak po namin si IDG, ito po yung tinatawag namin case build-up. And pag kami case build-up, that's enough, then we file a case dun sa court for us to search the place. Yun lang po talaga, and we have to put in legal means po.
General Marbil, let's take a step away from Pogos. I understand na hindi lang Pogo ang problema ng kapulisan natin at napakarami pa pong ibang issues. I think April lang po kayo, no? Na talaga sa pwesto. You started in April.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, having said that, I think you came from the controllership also.
Yes.
Of course, we know that the controllership yun yung parang finance office,
Yes.
right? How do you plan to, kumbaga, leverage your experience in the controllership to make changes in the PNP now? And will the changes that we will see under General Marbil reflect po yung path ninyo so far inside the PNP?
Yan, no, ano yan ang kagandahan. No? It's parang first na yata ako from comptrollership to...
Correct.
But hindi ako lumaki dyan sa comptrollership. Napunta lang po ako sa comptrollership. Nandun sa pinakang senior na ako. Kumbaga colonel na ako, senior colonel na ako, then doon po ako nag-general. But yun sa mga kagandahan po, looking for the finance, nakikita ko yung asan nyo ginagastos yung pera namin. Kaya during the command conference, sabi ko nga to our president, Sir, ang ginagawa po ng police is really for us to download people. We have so many offices right now na masyadong marami na-create ang duplication. And what we need is yung mga tao sa ground. Kaya nauubusan kayo ng tao dun sa mga beat patrols, kulang yung mga tao. Kasi ang nangyayari, masyado kami top-heavy. And since top-heavy kami, ang karamihan ng pera napupunta sa itaas.
And how can you change that po? Can you also do it within your term as PNP General?
Yeah, of course. Ang ginagawa lang namin doesn't mean na ang ginagawa namin is really to plan. Hindi lang naman po hindi lang po ako mag-isa ang nandito sa PNP, no. Meron kami director for plans na inaayos yung organization. Right now, ang ginagawa po namin, it's really to ano pa yung mga offices namin na may duplication function. Kailangan ba natin talaga o we have to audit? Kasi dati, ito po yung crime natin Right now, ang crime natin, anti-cybercrime. Right now, we need to put cybersecurity. So, nababago yung crime natin. Kaya ngayon, hindi na masyadong marami yung snatching, pero mataas naman yung cybercrime mo. Ito na pa yung flow natin. So, doon kami papasok. So, tanggalin na natin yung officers ito, dali na natin dito. And we need more people na nasa ground.
General, as Sean said, you were appointed April 1st, no?
Yeah.
And you are set to retire February 7 of next year.
Yes.
When you hit the mandatory retirement age of 56. I'm sorry to divulge your Pasensya na, pero that is mandatory by law that you have to retire by the age of 56. So that gives you only about 10 months.
That's really true.
But what can you realistically do in that time? It's really a very short period.
Yan, it's really true, no? Kaya ngayon nagiging problema natin pagka very short. But ang kagandahan na to, since nandito na ako sa finance, at of course, I came from plans rin. Ang ginagawa namin is really to program yung 3-year development plan natin and 5-year development plan na hindi pa nagawa dati. So ito yung plano natin. We have to really improve yung mga organization natin and yung deployment ng tao. Yun ang ginagawa na for the 10 months. And second, meron po kami ginagawa na that before na hindi ginagawa, it's really to look at the welfare ng mga tao natin. And that's what we are doing right now, no? Of course, we have yung legal assistance program natin and yung HMO natin. Meron po kami mga good, meron kami hospital, but it's only in Camp Crame, but we don't have any hospitals pagka nasa region. So kaya nga sabi ko yung mga polis natin, mas takot pa sila sa tuktok kaysa bala. Ayaw kasi malaman na may sakit sila. At
General,
mahal
if
po
I may,
magpa-doktor.
kasama po ba yung mga salaries ng mga personnel recently? Kasi, well, pinag-uusapan at usap-usapan din sa headlines na yung mga salary ng military and uniformed personnel. Damay po kayo doon at ano po yung magbabago in terms of that?
What do you mean by
yung
salary?
mga salaries of
Pension.
police, pension.
No, wala naman po pagbabago.
Walang magpapago.
Wala naman pagbabago sa pension sa amin. Tuloy-tuloy naman po yung pension natin. Wala naman pong binabago. Ang sinasabi lang natin ng presidente natin, it's doable pa ba yung pension natin? Ang last time na sinasabi ng presidente natin, what will happen dun sa mga namatay during the battle and what will happen dun sa mga na-incapacitate kasi may ginagawa nila. And ang pinaka-concern ng president natin is let us help people yung mga namamatay. Kasi dati, pagka namatay ka during the combat, it's yung parang posthumous lang one rank higher. Which is practically ang namamatay natin, puro mga bata. Correct. Yung mga mabababang rank. Wala naman po namamatay na general sa encounter. But since usually yung mga namamatay, mga lieutenants, yung mga mabababa, may mga anak yan Just imagine yung sweldo nila in one rank higher. It doesn't make any difference. So sabi nga, when you put it 2 ranks higher, mas malaking tulong pagka sa family nila. It's the very concern of our president.
General, recently there were several cops who were relieved from their position, specifically in Davao, related to an investigation on drug war killings.
Yes.
What is the mandate of the president for you in terms of that? I mean, coming from the previous administration to now that these are being investigated, ano po yung ginagawa nating cleansing within the own ranks? Any updates on that?
Number one, you have to correct, wala po kami ginagawang cleansing. No, ang sinasabi lang what happened, it's dun sa Davao, it's an recommendation made by our internal affairs section natin to make sure that these people abide by the law. Kasi talaga naman, pagka meron po mga killings, any killings, iniimbestigahan po ng IAS po natin as motu proprio. And these people, pagka nang involved ka sa killing, nililipat ka namin just to make sure na hindi po magkaroon ng whitewash or dapat yung investigation fair. Kasi pagka nandun yung police natin, ang iniisip nyo ay whitewash na naman yan. Kaya nga ito na, we have to correct the system. Any people na police natin na got involved in any shooting, kailangan natin tanggalin and investigate kung tamang procedure po yung ginawa. That ang gusto lang natin, and this is ang kagustuhan ng presidente natin, let us abide with the law.
But you're not calling it a cleansing?
No, I don't want. Wala naman po kami cleansing.
Kasi there was, under the time of Senator Bato de la Rosa, there was a lot of cleansing, as we know. I'm wondering what happened to that.
Are you talking about the policeman
Your
cleansing?
internal PNP cleansing,
Meron naman po kami mga procedure po na how to really improve our system. No? Meron kaming inaayos, meron po kaming IPER, that's Individual Performance Evaluation Report, na we have to submit every 6 months. Very strict po kami dun sa mga counterintelligence, kung mga people involved, yung mga tao natin na involved sa mga activities. Right now, we are very concerned. Hindi lang po dun sa kung nakikita nyo, hindi lang po kami doon sa very concerned doon sa ginagawa namin kung merong illegal activities sa mga tao namin. Ang sa term po namin, we're very concerned doon sa performance ng mga tao namin.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, General,
wait, sorry. We're running out of time, General. Sorry, but I can't let you go without asking you about Apollo Quiboloy. As we know, he's been declared a fugitive. Last we heard, the PNP said you had good leads na on where he is. Nasaan na po tayo? What is the update?
Continuous pong ginagawa natin. Hindi po, kung hindi po kami humihinto sa paghanap po sa kanya, not only, but lahat po ng mga nasawakan po natin.
How soon do you think you could make an announcement that you found
Nakita
him?
na po ba natin siya?
I guess,
Baka sikreto yun.
May sighting na. May sighting na.
That's right. That's the word, sighting. Yes.
Basta sinasabi, continuous pong ginagawa ng effort ng Philippine National Police.
Siguro magugulat na lang tayo one day, di ba?
Makukuha na lang
Mag-announce or
Remember, that's our
magbibigay ng
priority.
release.
Because I remember the arrest warrant was issued weeks ago. Baka hindi pa po ba naiinip yung Senate?
Remember po, dun sa US po, Osama bin Laden, was ilang years bago lang mahuli. Gusto namin tama. Hindi po kami pwede. And we have to see the consequences. Kung asan yun, may factor po kaming tinitignan na pagka yung isang tao, ilan yung nagbabantay, ilan po yung ilan yung masasaktan. We're very careful on that. Hindi po kinakita mo at sa gano'n.
Why is he so difficult to find? Sa Pilipinas na po siya, di ba? Tama po ba?
Yeah, of course.
Sabi ng immigration, yes.
Yes,
They believe he's here.
Hindi, kasi yung mga clues niya parang nasa ilalim siya ng bundok eh. Yung mga clues na binibigay niya.
But ang sinasabi ko lang, magagaling po yung intelligence natin. And where lahat po makikita nyo, ginagawa lang namin. We just want to make sure na 100% po kami. Hindi po kami basta-basta nag-apply ng ganito kung hindi kami so sure.
Ganito na lang, General. Do you think you will be able to hand him over before your term ends?
He looks determined.
He's determined. We're gonna have to leave it there. Wala na tayong oras.
Thank you, General, for your time.
Okay, that was PNP Chief Major General Romel Francisco Marbil. Maraming salamat, General. Okay. Okay, break muna tayo. Kakusapin namin si General off-cam. Pero mark your calendars para sa mga commuters to, okay? Dahil ang Phase 1 ng LRT1 Cavite Extension is all set to open later this year. The details sa aming pagbabalik. Keep it here on One News.
Welcome back. You are still watching the big story here on One News.
Phase 1 of the LRT1 Cavite Extension line will be operational by year-end. Transport Secretary Jaime Bautista, Finance Secretary Ralph Recto, and officials of the Light Rail Manila Corporation inspected parts of the Cavite extension of the railway today and said it is on track to open before Christmas. Construction for this part began in 2019. Once fully operational, the LRT1 extension will reduce travel time from Baclaran in Parañaque to Bacoor, Cavite to 25 minutes.
With 50,000 passengers passing through this, mababawasan yung sasakay sa private cars and other public utility vehicles. So that will really contribute to solving some of the traffic problems.
We'll be putting up a jeepney here and UB Express at pinag-aaralan rin natin magkaroon tayo ng bus line. This will be a duplicate with the PTEX. Ganun mangyayari. Kasi ngayon, ang means of transportation ng Parañaque is all jeepney. It's all jeep. So magkakaroon na tayo ng different alternative.
These stations are located at Redemptoris, MIA, Asia World, Ninoy Aquino Airport, and Dr. Santos in Sucat. Phase 2, which will start work once Phase 1 opens, covers the remaining 3 stations from Las Piñas to Niog in Cavite. Ticket prices for the LRT1 Cavite extension will follow the current fare matrix, the DOTR said, which means 13 pesos 29 cents at boarding and another 1.21 cents per kilometer distance fare. So for instance, from Baclaran to Dr. Santos Station, it will cost 25 pesos.
Now, before we go, enjoy our weekends. Here is our big picture tonight. Meet baby Aisha and baby Akiza, and they used to be conjoined. But now these twins will be living separate lives after a successful operation in Saudi Arabia. Aisha and Akiza, born to Filipina Hashima Yusuf, were joined at the abdomen and shared a liver. After 5 hours of surgery, the twins were finally separated. The bill for their operation was shouldered by the Saudi government.
Hindi ko alam kung anong good news doon, yung operation o yung
Both.
libre yung...
That's a
Siyempre,
good
both.
news stack.
Tatlo yung good news, okay?
Which is the
First,
LRT1 extension, operational by year-end.
nadagdagan ko pa yan. So yung LRT, tapos yung phase 2, mag-open na rin, dalawa na yun. 1.5. Tapos nahiwalay yung twins. Healthy sila. Plus 2 yon na good news. Tapos yung isa, libre ng Saudi government.
Tapos na rin El Nino.
Oh, yes, that's right. Well, but then we're bracing for La Niña
La Niña.
this time. No, we're not gonna jinx it. We're ending on a good note.
We are ending on a good note.
So yeah, phase 1 of
Wait, may
LRT1 by
dagdag pa ako.
year-end.
Ano?
May price rollback sa oil next week.
Oh,
Tuesday,
that's
6
right.
a.m.
Diesel.
Kaya
they're-
tipirin nyo muna, wag muna kayong umalis ng bahay nitong weekend.
Huwag
para
masyadong
next
galit, huwag apakan yung gas ng malakas para makatipid at umabot ng Tuesday, 6 a.m. Pero next week pa yon. For this week, that's it from The Big Story.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night and a great weekend.